Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're about to take another deep dive today.
Yeah, this time we're going to be looking at staging conventions.
Exactly. We've got some really cool excerpts about theater history.
Yeah, and how it's changed over time, the spaces they use and like all the different techniques.
And we'll be exploring all of that.
From the ancient Greeks to modern experimental theater.
So we'll uncover how these kind of rules of the stage really shape everything we see.
And feel as an audience member, yeah.
And I think it's fascinating to think of it as like a secret language
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's like this unspoken language.
that unlocks the magic of theater.
What I think is so fascinating is that these conventions, they aren't just arbitrary rules.
Hmm.
They're like these puzzle pieces
Uh-huh.
that all fit together to create this whole world of meaning.
Right.
And just like languages evolve, so do staging conventions.
Absolutely.
It reflects the changing values and artistic expressions of different times and cultures.
Okay, so before we travel through time, let's break down this idea of staging conventions.
Sure.
It sounds a little technical.
Yeah, it might sound technical,
Right.
but it's really about understanding those unspoken agreements
Yeah.
between the performers and the audience. And they create this kind of shared language that allows the story to unfold
Uh-huh.
in a way that makes sense, even if it's not always realistic. Think of it as the internal logic of the theatrical world.
So even if we see actors flying through the air or a set that transforms before our very eyes,
Right.
we kind of just go with it because it fits within the established conventions
Exactly.
of that performance.
The key is that these conventions create consistency and coherence.
Yeah.
So it allows us to suspend our disbelief and really get swept away by the story.
Now, I'm really curious about how these conventions have changed over time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, theater's been around for centuries.
Centuries and centuries, yeah. And the evolution of these staging conventions is a fascinating reflection
Yeah.
of how societies have changed their views.
Uh-huh.
For example, like picture yourself in an ancient Greek theater.
Okay.
Imagine just sitting on a hillside, like with this breathtaking view of the landscape.
Oh, wow.
And you're watching a play unfold under this open sky.
That sounds like a completely different experience than watching a play in a traditional indoor theater.
Completely, yeah. And these ancient Greek theaters, they were often built near temples.
Oh, interesting.
So it blurred the lines between religious ritual and theatrical performance
Mhm.
and this vastness of the space.
Yeah.
And that connection to nature would have created this sense of awe and grandeur.
So the location itself played a really crucial role
Oh,
in
absolutely.
shaping the audience's experience.
Yeah, it's a stark contrast
Yeah.
to the enclosed spaces of Roman theaters,
Uh-huh.
which were all about spectacle and entertainment. They were massive structures with elaborate backdrops
Wow.
and seating that could accommodate thousands of spectators.
It sounds like the Romans were going for a more immersive cinematic experience even back then.
In a way, yeah, they really used that monumental architecture
Yeah.
and visual effects to create a sense of awe and escapism.
It reflects the Roman Empire's focus on power and grandeur, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how these early theater spaces really reflect the values and aesthetics of their time.
Totally.
But what happened is these empires declined. Did theater just disappear?
Not at all. It adapted.
Okay.
During the medieval period, when large empires were crumbling and travel became more common, theater took on a new form, traveling troupes.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, these performers would set up movable stages in town squares
Wow.
or even in church naves, so they were bringing theater to the people.
So instead of these grand permanent structures, theater became more intimate and accessible.
Exactly. The focus shifted from spectacle to storytelling.
Okay.
And they really relied on the performer's skills and the audience's imagination to bring those stories to life.
It's fascinating how theater managed to thrive even in times of upheaval and change.
Oh, yeah.
But how did we get from these traveling troupes to the more formal theaters we see today?
Well, that's where the Renaissance comes in.
Okay.
This period marked a revival of classical art and culture.
Yeah.
And with it, a renewed interest in theater as this sophisticated art form. And we see the emergence of the proscenium arch stage during this time.
Ah, so that's where that iconic stage design comes from.
Yes.
What was the thinking behind that shift?
Well, the proscenium arch created a very clear separation
Uh-huh.
between the performers and the audience.
Okay.
So it framed the action like a painting.
Oh, I see.
And this shift reflected the Renaissance's emphasis on perspective and realism in art.
Makes sense.
It also catered to a more elite audience who could afford to attend performances
Right.
in these newly built, often very ornate theaters.
So theater became a bit more exclusive during this period?
In a way, yes, but it also led to a flourishing of theatrical innovation.
Oh, okay.
Like playwrights like Shakespeare were writing complex and engaging plays specifically for the proscenium arch stage.
Wow.
They were exploring new forms of dramatic storytelling.
And then came the Restoration period, right? I always loved the elaborate costumes and sets from that era.
Oh, yes, the Restoration period saw even more ornate theater designs
Hmm.
and innovations like the apron stage,
Oh, right.
which extended out beyond the proscenium arch,
Okay.
allowing for closer interaction between actors and the audience.
So they were playing with that boundary
Yes.
between the performer and spectator again, even after establishing that separation with the proscenium arch.
Exactly. It shows that even within a seemingly fixed structure like the proscenium arch, there's always room for experimentation
Yeah.
and pushing those boundaries.
Like theater's constantly evolving,
Absolutely.
finding new ways to engage the audience.
Yeah.
And tell stories in compelling ways. But what about today? I mean, we see such a variety of stage types now, from those classic proscenium arch stages to more experimental spaces.
Absolutely. The modern stage is a true playground
Yeah.
of possibilities. And each type of stage offers these unique opportunities for storytelling
Right.
and audience engagement. Let's explore those in more detail next. You know, it's fascinating how each type of stage creates this different relationship between the performers and the audience.
Yeah.
Like, take the arena stage, for example.
Oh, yeah. Those are the ones where the audience surrounds the stage on all sides.
Exactly,
I've
yeah.
only seen a couple of plays in that kind of setting, but it's definitely a unique experience.
It is. The arena stage creates this heightened sense of intimacy,
Uh-huh.
almost like you're part of the action,
Yeah.
because you're so close to the performers and you can see the reactions of the audience members across from you.
I can imagine that must create some really interesting challenges for the actors and directors.
Absolutely. They have to be very mindful of sight lines and blocking,
Yeah.
making sure that everyone in the audience has a clear view of what's happening.
Right.
And the actors don't have the luxury of playing to just one direction.
Right.
You know, they have to be aware of their movements and projections at all times.
Oh, for sure.
Then you have thrust stages, which extend out into the audience.
Okay.
Like a peninsula surrounded by seating on three sides.
Those are fun. I remember seeing Shakespeare performed on a thrust stage. It felt like the actors were right there with us.
That's the beauty of a thrust stage. It blurs the line between performer and spectator,
Yeah.
creating a more immersive and engaging experience.
Right.
And speaking of unique perspectives, there are traverse stages,
Okay.
where the audience is seated on two opposite sides,
Oh, wow.
like watching a tennis match.
I've never actually seen a performance on a traverse stage. That sounds like it would create some really dynamic movement
Yes.
and interesting visual compositions.
Absolutely. It allows for a lot of creativity in terms of blocking and stage pictures.
Right.
And then, of course, you have amphitheaters,
Yeah.
those large open-air structures that have been used for performances since ancient times.
It's like those ancient Greek theaters we talked about earlier coming full circle.
Exactly.
They're perfect for those big, epic productions, aren't they?
Amphitheaters offer a sense of scale and grandeur
Yeah.
that's hard to replicate in an indoor theater, and they often take advantage of the natural surroundings.
Oh, yeah.
You know, incorporating the landscape into the performance.
That's so cool. It's like nature itself becomes part of the set design.
Exactly. But what about those more unconventional spaces?
Okay.
You mentioned found spaces earlier.
Right, right.
What exactly are those?
Yeah, what are those?
So found spaces are any non-traditional spaces that are adapted for performance.
Okay.
It could be a warehouse, a park, an abandoned building,
Oh, wow.
or even a street corner.
So it's all about taking theater out of its usual setting and bringing it into the unexpected.
Exactly. Found spaces offer this sense of immediacy and surprise,
Right.
and they often force the audience to engage with the performance in a more active way
Yeah.
as they navigate the unconventional setting.
It sounds like found spaces encourage a lot of creativity and experimentation,
Absolutely.
both for the performers and the audience.
It's all about pushing the boundaries of what we consider traditional theater. Now, imagine you're a director and you have this incredible script in your hands.
Okay.
How do you choose the right stage type to bring that story to life?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'd imagine it's not just about personal preference.
Right?
There must be a lot of strategic thinking involved.
Absolutely. You're right. A director has to consider the play's themes,
Uh-huh.
the playwright's intentions, the desired level of audience engagement, and even the budget and technical limitations.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's like solving a puzzle,
Yeah.
figuring out how all those elements fit together.
Right.
To create the most impactful experience, Like, take a play like Waiting for Godot, for example,
Oh,
with its minimalist setting and existential themes.
yeah.
A proscenium arch stage might feel too distant and formal.
Yeah, I could see how that wouldn't quite capture the play's sense of isolation and absurdity.
Right. An arena stage, on the other hand, could create a sense of claustrophobia and intimacy,
Um,
really immersing the audience in the character's world. Or imagine a play set in a grand palace.
okay.
A proscenium arch stage might be the perfect choice to showcase that opulence and formality of that setting.
It's fascinating how the choice of stage can so drastically influence how we perceive the story
Right.
and connect with the characters.
And it's not just about the overall stage type.
Right.
Directors also have to think carefully about how the actors move within that space
Yeah.
and how those movements shape the audience's perspective. They use stage directions, like
Right.
upstage, downstage, stage right, stage left,
Right, right.
to guide the actors and create specific visual composition.
It's like a choreographed dance,
Uh-huh.
but instead of music, they're moving to the rhythm of the dialogue
Right.
and the emotional beats of the story.
Precisely. And just like in dance, those movements convey meaning and emotion.
Yeah.
A character who constantly moves upstage might be trying to assert dominance,
Okay.
while a character who lingers downstage might be seeking intimacy with the audience.
It makes me think about how much thought and intention goes into every aspect of a theatrical production. It's not just about standing on stage and delivering lines.
Yeah.
It's about creating a complete sensory experience.
And that's where the concept of realism versus stylization comes in.
Okay.
Some productions aim for a hyper-realistic approach,
Mm-hmm.
using detailed sets, props, costumes to create this seamless illusion of reality.
Like those historical dramas where every detail from the furniture to the actors' hairstyles is like meticulously researched and recreated.
Exactly. They want the audience to feel like they're transported back in time,
Yeah.
peeking into a real-life situation. On the other hand, some productions embrace a more stylized approach,
Okay.
acknowledging the theatricality of the performance.
So they might use abstract sets, exaggerated movements, or even break the fourth wall,
Yes,
that invisible barrier between the actors and the audience.
precisely. Stylized productions often use these techniques to highlight the artifice of theater,
Okay.
inviting the audience to engage with the performance on a more imaginative level.
It's like they're saying, hey, we know this isn't real life, but let's play pretend together and see where it takes us.
Exactly. And speaking of breaking the fourth wall, that's a whole other fascinating convention that can be used in so many creative ways.
Yeah, I love it when a play breaks the fourth wall. It's so unexpected and playful. It makes me feel like I'm really part of the story.
It is a powerful technique, you're right.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little. What are some of the ways that playwrights and directors actually use this technique?
Well, one really common approach is direct address, where a character actually speaks directly to the audience,
Right.
acknowledging their presence.
Yeah.
It can be as simple as like a knowing glance or a quick aside,
Uh-huh.
or it can be a full-blown monologue
Wow.
where the character's sharing like their inner thoughts and feelings.
Oh, like in Shakespeare's plays when a character delivers a soliloquy,
Exactly.
revealing their like secret plots or desires to the audience.
Soliloquies are a classic example of breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
They give us a glimpse into the character's mind,
Right.
creates a sense of complicity between the character and the audience.
It's like we're being let in on a secret,
Yeah,
which makes us feel even more invested in the story.
absolutely.
Another technique is narration,
Yes.
where a character steps outside the action of the play
Uh-huh.
to provide commentary or context.
Right. It can be used to frame the story or offer insights into the character's motivations or even guide the audience's emotional response.
I've seen plays where the narrator is like a character from the story and others where it's like an outside voice, almost like a disembodied presence.
Yeah, both approaches can be effective
Right.
depending on the desired effect.
Makes sense.
And then there are asides.
Oh, yeah.
Those quick whispered comments that a character makes to the audience as if the other characters on stage can't hear them.
Asides are so much fun.
Yeah, they are.
It's like getting a little wink from the actor, like sharing a joke
Uh-huh.
or a piece of gossip
Right.
that the other characters are oblivious to.
Exactly. It creates a sense of playfulness and complicity,
Yeah,
reminding us that we're all in on this theatrical game together.
I like that.
And just like any game, theater has its own set of rules when it comes to time.
Now that you mention it, plays don't always follow a linear timeline, do they?
Nope.
Sometimes we jump back and forth in time or experience events out of order.
That's right. We often see plays with linear action
Uh-huh.
where the story unfolds in a straightforward chronological order.
Okay.
But theater also allows for nonlinear storytelling where time becomes more fluid and fragmented.
So it's like those movies that jump between different timelines,
Yes.
keeping you guessing about how the pieces fit together.
Exactly. Playwrights might use flashbacks to reveal crucial backstory,
Uh-huh.
or flash forwards to create suspense,
Right.
or even split scenes to show multiple actions happening simultaneously.
I remember seeing a play where the stage was divided into two sections
Oh, wow.
and two different scenes were happening at the same time. It was so cool to see how those stories intertwined
Yeah.
and eventually converged.
Those split scenes can be very effective in creating a sense of complexity
Right.
and dynamism. And then there are techniques like slow motion
Okay.
freeze frames or even reverse chronology where the story unfolded in reverse order.
Whoa, those sound like some really mind-bending techniques.
They can be,
Yeah.
but they can also be incredibly powerful in creating a specific mood
Uh-huh.
or highlighting a particular theme. Think about a scene where a character is experiencing a traumatic event.
Yeah,
Using slow motion could heighten the emotional impact of that moment,
right.
allowing the audience to really feel the weight of that experience.
Yeah, like time itself bends to the will of the story,
Yeah,
which is such a cool concept.
it is.
And that's just a small taste of the many ways playwrights and directors manipulate time on stage. There are endless possibilities, limited only by the imagination. And remember, all these conventions we've been discussing, from stage type to breaking the fourth wall to playing with time, they're constantly evolving.
They are.
So it's not just about learning a fixed set of rules. It's about understanding the underlying principles and appreciating how those principles can be applied in new and creative ways.
Exactly. As new technologies emerge and artists continue to push the boundaries of theatrical expression, we can expect to see even more innovative and exciting staging conventions in the future.
That's so exciting. It means there's always something new to discover in the world of theater. So what does this all mean for us as audience members?
Yeah.
Why should we care about these kind of behind-the-scenes conventions?
Well, for one thing, understanding these conventions can really deepen our appreciations of the artistry and skill that goes into creating a theatrical experience. It's like being able to see the brushstrokes of a painting or the individual notes of a symphony.
So instead of just passively watching a play, we can actively engage with it,
Yeah.
noticing the subtle choices that shape our experience.
Exactly. When you understand the conventions of staging, you can see how directors use space, movement, time, and even the fourth wall to create specific moods, highlight certain themes, and really guide your emotional journey as an audience viewer.
It's like having a secret decoder ring that unlocks a whole new level of meaning and appreciation.
Precisely. And the more you learn about these conventions, the more you'll start to notice them in future performances.
Right.
You'll become a more informed and discerning audience member, able to engage with theater on a much deeper and more meaningful level.
That's a great takeaway. So next time you're watching a play, don't just sit back and let the story wash over you. Pay attention to those staging conventions at work.
Yes.
What kind of stage is being used? How are the actors moving within that space? Are there any moments where the fourth wall is broken? How is time being manipulated?
Ask yourself these questions, and you'll start to see those hidden layers of artistry and intention that go into creating a truly compelling theatrical experience.
It's like becoming a theater detective, uncovering all the clues
Yeah.
that lead to a deeper understanding of the story
Right.
and the world that it creates.
And the best part is, the more you investigate, the more rewarding the experience becomes. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep embracing the magic of live performance.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of staging conventions. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration of the art of theater.